I'm Linda Harding, and I am the Community Engagement and Volunteer Coordinator for the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. And what we're going to be talking about today is a co-sponsorship. And it's kind of funny because the State Department is the one who is pushing for the resettlement agencies to do this co-sponsorship because they feel like it will integrate the families faster. And, you know, it was really interesting because I was thinking about that as John was speaking and going, see, the State Department gets it. I don't know why other people don't get it, right? That we really do need this oneness, right? We need to work together. And, you know, if you can imagine, I can't even imagine, even if you dropped me in England where we speak the same language for the most part, right? It would be really hard to navigate the culture, and like I wouldn't even know how you go about renting an apartment. Is it different than is it here? Things like that. But then you've got people from other cultures that are coming.
You would let an apartment. You would let.
Okay, see, I would have to learn that.
Even a flat.
Yeah, a flat. Yes, there you go. It's a flat. See, but we have people coming from all over the world, and a lot of times, a lot of things throw them, like some of the legal things that we do. We have so much paperwork here compared to other countries, right? To, you know, if you sign a lease, that's a legal document. You can't just walk away from it, right? And so we spend a lot of time with our clients talking to them about these kind of things, and that's where, like, you all can help too. So we're gonna go ahead and start. So if you'll go ahead and put up the first slide. Okay, you can go to the next one. All right, so what I'm going to do today is give you a broad overview of what we do and what you guys will be doing. And the way this is going to work is you will be working closely with our staff. So a lot of it will be on-the-job training. We're going to work hand in hand with you all, so that we can ensure that you guys are successful, that our clients, that the goals we need to meet, but ultimately all the responsibility is on us, it's not on you. So I share that because I don't want you all to get overwhelmed by some of this. But I do want to share our mission at the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. Everybody has a mission statement, but I feel like this is really the key thing to what we're trying to do, is to protect the rights and address the needs of persons in forced or voluntary migration worldwide and support their transition to a dignified life. And that dignified life is like really key to what everything that we're trying to do, that's what we're trying to do. Next slide. So the overview, the program is designed to foster relationships between clients and the community, right? That's one of the things the State Department has found that they said is much more successful for our clients to integrate into the community. The program is a partnership between your group and USCRI. Therefore, we're going to provide all the resources, the tools, and the support that you need to be successful. So we're not going to just hand you a family and go, here you go, you got to do this list of things. We're not going to do that at all. This program is prescribed, like I said, in a set process from the State Department. We contract with the State Department, so we ourselves are a nonprofit, but we contract with the State Department, and they have a whole list of things that we're responsible for that we have to do to ensure that our clients get their needs met and that they get the support they need. Next slide.
It's the federal government, right?
Yes, yeah, the State Department is the federal government. I like to start here with refugee. Sometimes people know this information, sometimes they don't, but a refugee is a legal term. So therefore, refugees are able to work immediately upon arrival. Whereas if you immigrate, you have to get a work visa. Sometimes that takes longer, even under some designations like temporary provisional status, things like that. People have to be able to get some kind of work visa, but refugees are very different from that. That was the other thing I was going to tell you. I've set these slides here, but we can send them out to everyone. So you don't have to take notes unless you want to, but these slides will be available for you all. A refugee cannot be deported. Now, I suppose there's some, you know, if they break the law or do something like that, that's a little bit different, but it's not like an asylum seeker or somebody like that. A refugee, once they're here, their path and their goal is to become U.S. citizens. They provide subsidies and benefits from the U.S. government. They're supported by resettlement organizations like ourselves for the first 5 years that they're here, okay? After about 5 years, they're able to take that test and become the U.S. citizen if they so choose. One of the things that I like to share, though, is refugees have been forced to leave their home country to escape war, violence, or persecution. And that's a big thing. So they all have some sort of trauma, right? Some of it's really extensive and some of it is still trauma, but it's not as bad as some, right? Depending on where they're coming from or what's happening in the world. But that's just something that we're going to talk about as we go through this. But they're also parents and artists and children. They are very resilient human beings. I mean, I'm always amazed at how much our folks are able to have joy and experience true joy. So that's something to remember too. Like I'm really in awe of them and knowing some of the things they've gone through that can be so resilient. Next slide. Okay, yes.
Can they really become citizens after 5 years?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can they really become citizens after 5 years? Because we've had friends in Flagstaff, Arizona, where we moved from, that have been trying to be integrated into our culture for more than 20 years. So I thought there was a big backlog.
Well, as far as I know, they can take that test. So we actually have somebody on staff who came from Afghanistan 5 years ago. He was helping the U.S. government, and so he had to flee because that was a known entity. It became known. But he is taking the test this year. So maybe it depends on where you're at, but I know here that there are places that will help the folks study for those tests and take those U.S. citizens tests. So maybe it's an Arizona thing. It could
Probably
be.
has to do with their status. The refugee is a status.
Right, it is, and so that's very different than someone who's an asylum seeker or a parolee or things like that. So, so anyway, but yeah, but where the people that you guys will be working with are refugees. There'll be refugees coming in that way. So I want to share with you some of the programs that we offer. You're going to work in this first program because it's that first 3 to 4 months, but I just want you to know the other programs because you're going to hear these words, and if you need them repeated again, always feel free to ask the case managers, like, what is MG again? But just so you know kind of what we offer and the resources we have for our clients. So resettlement and placement, we call that RMP. That's the group that you're going to partner with. This program is for the first 3 months of arrival, 90 days, and is a program, like I said, your group will be partnering with. The program offers basics such as housing and social services. So we find the housing for everyone, okay? You guys don't have to find the housing. You don't have to pay their rent. We pay the first 3 months rent and their deposits, so you guys don't have to do that. We're in charge of that, and we might ask you to help us sign up for social services, but all of that is on us. So that's kind of what we do in that first 90 days. Matching grant, we refer to that as MG too, is exactly what it sounds like. And that starts 91 days, that 91st day after they've been here. And really what it is, it's an incentive program. So we try to match federal funds and then we get, double the money to help the clients. But it's basically, if you take ESL and you get a job, we will help pay your rent and do some other things for you as well. So it's this, incentive program that we kind of have. So we do offer ESL in-house. We also partner like with Wake Tech offers ESL for free. There's Refugee Hope Partners, Welcome House that we partner with. Those are other nonprofits in the area. They do ESL. So ESL is very available for our refugee clients. And so this program is really nice because it gives further rental and other assistance, financial assistance, right? If they come into the program, it also puts them ahead, right? By helping them, learn some English. We do job placement. So we have a job program staff who she works and reaches out to all these different employment places in Raleigh and the surrounding area that want to hire our refugees. We help them write their resumes, things like that. So one of the things you might be doing is helping them prepare for an interview or something like that. But we have people in-house that are connecting to jobs. Now, if you all know of somebody that's looking to hire someone, that can work too, but that's not your responsibility. But if you know someone, always feel like you can connect us to them. And so, like I said, and then that program lasts, another 4 to 6 months past the first 3 months. It just kind of depends on when they get a job and that kind of thing. Refugee support services. This begins either after the RMP or the MG and lasts up to 5 years. There's no financial support, but there is case management. Now, why would someone not go into matching grant? So we had one person, for example, who went to school at NC State and got an engineering degree. They went back to Kabul, Afghanistan. And so when the government fell, they're like, well, I'm coming back to Raleigh because that's where I know, right? But him and his family became one of our clients. But he had a degree in engineering. He had connections. He got a job pretty quickly. And so he didn't really need to go into MG, right? He was in a very different situation because he spoke English, he had connections. So he said, well, I don't need to go to MG, and he didn't, right? So there are some reasons why. If you're over 65, you wouldn't go into matching grant because you can't work and things like that. So there are some reasons, but we do have this support service that goes for the first 5 years. Preferred communities, this program really offers some additional help for people. So like we've had a client that came over here and discovered she had cancer. So she went into preferred communities because they can help with the doctor's appointments and do a whole bunch of like one-on-one care, or like single parents need a little more care, whatever the situation might be, we can put them into that preferred communities anytime within that 5 years. So these are the big programs that we offer. We do have a set of lawyers that deal with the legal aspect and immigration. We don't do a lot with immigration. We do more with refugees. But an example of where we kind of cross paths is the Afghani folks, because they actually came in as humanitarian parolees. And they were going to treat them as such, and then all the resettlement agencies complained, and so they finally said, the government, the State Department said, fine, then we're still going to call them humanitarian parolees, but we're going to give them all the benefits of a refugee. So they did that, but now all those folks, and I think it was like 60 or 760,000, something like that, that came over from Afghanistan, they're all seeking asylum now. That's not going so great. So that's why some people were trying to pass that Afghani Act that I think you might have heard about before Christmas. It didn't get passed. So now we're in this process of trying to renew so that they can stay and finish out their asylum thing. So it's, how the government is. But but these are the main programs that you'll hear about that we'll be dealing with our refugee clients. Right, next slide. So now your partnership with refugee or resettlement and placement, that first 3 months, these are some of the things that you'll be doing in partnership with the case managers. And that is airport arrival pickup, right? So they'll fly in and we need people to go pick them up from the airport, take them to either their temporary housing or their permanent housing. Sometimes we luck out and we get permanent housing before they arrive. It doesn't happen very often, but you'll be taking them there. The home setup, so once we do get housing for them, our groups in your group would be setting up the apartment for them. We do have a partnership with Green Chair Project. Are you guys familiar with the Green Chair? Some of you are. So the Green Chair Project started a while ago, and they get donations of housing and they put it together for like an apartment. And then what they did, they started out helping people who were unhoused move to housing, because forks and towels and couches and chairs, all that stuff costs a lot of money. And so this was a way to really help them. And the packages are like $200, so it's pretty, I think, affordable. So anyway, that's what Green Chair does. So some groups are partnering with Green Chair, some groups are just gathering the list of items that are needed and they set up the apartments. So that's up to you guys to decide what to do. but you'll be setting up in the home. Transportation to initial medical appointments. So we are required by the State Department to do their initial medical appointments, and so somebody would be taking them to those couple of appointments. There usually are lots of follow-up appointments, but Medicaid will typically pay for rides for that. So we're just talking about the initial ones for your group. Application of subsidies. So we might ask you to help with some of that. Maybe some of you would be willing to do that. It doesn't mean all of you. And like I said, you'd be partnering with our case managers to do something like that. Cultural orientation. We do have a whole curriculum and we go over a lot of material. And so we would have you do that. But also our biggest thing we need you to do is reinforce that, right? So like kids have to go to school. You can't just keep them home, right? There's a state law about that. You know, things like that. Help them understand you can't break your lease, you know, just things like that, or even understanding how the school works. A lot of kids, when they come over, are very concerned about the school lunches. I'm not sure why, but they are, because I think a lot of them are used to just eating their lunch at home. So just explaining, well, you can bring food from home. You don't have to eat with the school. You know, just kind of reinforcing those kind of things. Helping them know where the closest grocery store is, where a park is, the library if they're interested, you know, just what's in their area where they're at. Setting up bank accounts. So we have a bank that we work with, they know us. So that would be something that we would have you guys do. Teaching them to ride the bus is super important. I know the bus is not that great, but it is a way for them to be independent, and that's what we want them to eventually be. Yes?
Would you talk a little more about application of subsidies? I don't quite
Okay.
understand what it is.
Okay, so application of subsidies, someone just asked about, was so like SNAP benefits, Medicaid, filling out those forms. You know, you think, oh, filling out those forms is really crazy, and it's not, because they don't have a lot of information. So mostly that will be done by the case managers, but there might be some ways that you guys can help with that. They do have to, males have to register for select service. I was really surprised about that, but they have to do that, you know, just those kind of things. So, and then, let's see, and then teaching them to ride the bus. Like I said, all of this will be like a hand-in-hand process you do with a case manager. So we aren't going to give you a bunch of forms and say, you guys got to do this. We're not going to do that right at all. So, but this is just kind of some of the stuff that you'll be doing. Maybe helping with some school enrollment, making sure the kid knows where the bus is to be picked up, like you just walk down your street here, you know, that kind of thing. So, all right, next slide. Okay, so this is just a way to kind of let you know what kind of time commitment you have. We've had one group that's almost finished doing this co-sponsorship and another group that's like 2 weeks in. And so this is like the basic part. I think that we're finding the groups are spending more time than this, but that's because they choose to do this. But really the way that we're looking at this, the first month, most of the tasks will be completed in coordination with the case manager. And we're talking about 20 hours total, not per person, but just for the family. And the whole goal of this is at the beginning, you guys are going to be doing more, the family's not going to be doing as much. And then by the time you get to that 4th month, it should switch, right? The family should be doing more of these things for themselves, and you guys will be doing less. So we're thinking that first month, about 20 hours total. You will do some pre-arrival, you know, if we get the apartment before they come, setting that up, getting them from the airport, that kind of thing. The 2nd month, there's a few more tasks. A lot of that stuff has to be completed within the first 30 days, so that's why that's more. But then we're talking about another 5 to 10 hours, the 3rd month, maybe 5. And then the 4th month, it's you bringing the family in to meet their matching grant coordinator. They'll probably more than likely go into matching grant. You'll meet that case manager. And then what's going to be explained to the family and to you all and the case manager is that you guys will be turning the family over to the MG case manager. So you guys could still be friends with them, but you're not going to be providing services to them like you're doing now. And we think that this will be great because it's a nice beginning and stopping time. Because I think that the way that some of these things have happened before, they just, like, groups don't know when to stop, right, with the family. You know, there's still, like, there was one group when I came aboard that was still helping a family and taking them to doctor's appointments after 5 years. That shouldn't be the way that it is, right? They should be learning to use the bus early on so that they can do that, or Medicaid, using Medicaid transport. And the matching grant coordinator can help them with that and make sure, and that's really actually easy. If you know the appointment and the date, you could just put it in the system and you've got a ride. So, so we found all these resources and things, so always ask about that. But the whole 4th month is really about you explain to them, we're going to be your friends now. So think about, what would you do for your neighbor? So if my neighbor, my next door neighbor, came to me and said, hey, you know, I lost my job, I'm looking for a job, I would probably go, oh, well, I know of some jobs, or maybe, well, I don't know, but, you know, I'll listen, but I'm not going to go sit over at her house and write a resume for her, right? So there's a huge difference about what you would do for your neighbor and what you would do for this, right? So that's kind of what we're trying to make that line there. So does anybody have any questions about this? Pretty straight. Yeah.
Does anyone ever really try to like get a driver's license or anything?
Yes, they do try to get driver's license. So we have run some classes before about driver's ed, like the written portion, and they can take it in their own language. So we have done some of that. But as far as like the driving time, that's been a little harder. But yes, a lot of our clients are trying to get cars, and the problem is that's probably one of the last things they do is get a car, because, you know, it's not just getting the car and putting gasoline in it. It's the maintenance, it's the property taxes every year, it's the title, it's the tags, right? It's all that stuff, the insurance, all adds up. We do not help them get cars because it's just such a big, overwhelming thing, and we have this huge list of things we have to do. We have to put the limit somewhere. So
I haven't taken the bus in forever.
yeah.
I know with the school buses, they have this amazing app where you could see the bus coming. Do they do that with the
Yes.
city buses?
Yes, so there is an app, and I will get you that stuff, and make sure you guys have a copy of it. But yes, there are 2 apps, and so like one of the things we've had to do is ride the bus, right? So that we understand how that is and how it works and things like that. But there are 2 apps. One app will let you see when the bus is coming, right? So that you can watch that. There's another app too that you can say, well, I live here and I need to go, you know, like say you live right here and I need to be at a doctor's appointment at, you know, Clinic E. And what it will do, it will give you the route, but it'll also back up the time and tell you, okay, if you want to be there at 11:30, this is when you need to leave from your house, right? So there's a couple of really nice apps. The bus is, excuse me, free right now. So I'm going to take a drink just a second. And I don't know, when we've talked to the bus people, they're going to make a decision as to whether they keep it free or not. But if that changes, it would change in January. So, okay. And, okay. And, so anyway, we'll let you know about that. So we do have, you know, some of those apps, and that's, and some of the stuff that I'll send you, I'll make sure that you get. So, okay. And we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, communication. So there's 2 different things that we have. One is called WhatsApp. I don't know, some of you may be familiar with it, some of you not. So what you guys will do is you'll create a group called on the WhatsApp. So it's private, so it's not like other people are on it. We'll put the case managers on it too as soon as you get that group set up. And then you guys can just have a running communication. And it's worked pretty well for the last 2 groups. So like somebody will be like, I'm going to go over to the house now because they said something about the stove wasn't working, so I'm going to go look. And so then everybody in the group knows. So it's not like they've told you, because that's another thing our clients do. Like they'll sometimes tell everybody, and then it gets all confusing, right? Because they'll tell you and they'll tell you and tell you. And then you're like, oh no, I've got to go do this. But if you have this one long run of communications, right, then you know, like, oh, they told me this, and so I'm going to go over there and check it out, or whatever the case might be. So, and then that's a way too for the case managers to see kind of what's going on. The other one is there's a new app that'll let you track your hours. And that one I can't give you until we get a family assigned to you. I don't know why. It's something that the State Department has created with another nonprofit. And so it's a nice app and it works pretty good. I'll just wait. And once we get the group, then I can put you guys all in and you can download it on your phone, and then you can just track your hours or say, you know, we picked them up at the airport, everything went good. Or you can write a note like, you know, I don't know, somebody, you know, they lost their luggage, that kind of thing. So it's kind of both of those are a way to share information, but also track hours. So we'll talk about more than that when you guys get closer, if that makes sense. Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, other info. I have like information on all of these things, and I'm going to send to Elizabeth. They're all electronic, right? So like airport pickup, I have a little job description of what you need to do. So like one of the things for airport pickup is, even though RDU is small compared to other airports, a lot of times clients will get off and then they just stand there. They don't know to go because they've maybe never ridden on an airplane before, so they don't know to go to the luggage. We've talked to RDU and Homeland Security, like they won't let us go back there, right? So typically what you're going to have to do is find a security guard and say, hey, there's a family probably just standing there. Can you go get them and usher them, you know, towards their luggage pickup, right? So, so things like that. The banking info, like I said, it's one bank that we deal with, so all that information is there. The stuff about bus apps, car seats. We will provide the car seats. So if you're going to pick them up from the airport and some of the kids need car seats, we'll give you those car seats. We also have like little short videos if you don't know how to put a car seat in for a certain age, that kind of thing. We have the code of conduct, the home setup, the Medicaid transport form that you can use to fill out for them. Millbrook Food Pantry sign up link. Millbrook is, it's a Methodist church, kind of near where we are in North Hills, but they will provide food for our clients twice a month. So sometimes we'll, especially if they're a bigger family, we put them on that. And so we might ask you, it's a one page, you just put in their name and their information. It's real easy to do. So anyway, that's other info that I'll send to you guys, can look through that. Next slide, please. All right, so I have a couple of these throughout this because I just want to remind you, it's kind of a little joke, but it's also this thing to remind you this is a partnership, right? So I don't want you guys to feel overwhelmed about it. We're going to provide you the tools and the resources and support that you need to be successful, because we want our clients to be successful. We want everybody to be successful. Next slide. Okay, car seat safety. Here's what you need to know. Is that children under 13 aren't allowed to ride in the front seat of a car in the state of North Carolina. Children between 8 and 12, and it really matters on their poundage and how tall they are, that kind of thing, must be in a booster seat. Children less than 8 years old and less than 80 pounds must be in a car seat. Children under 2 or 40 pounds must be in a rear-facing car seat. Car seats are hard because sometimes, especially if clients aren't used to them, they'll be like, well, you know what, I'll just hold my baby. And you're like, you can't, that's like, you can't do that. That's against the law. First thing you need to learn. You can't just hold your baby. No matter how insistent they are, you have to be more insistent and go no, right? Because you're the one that's going to get the ticket if you're transporting them, right? And then just kind of explaining that, and that if you know about sitting in the front seat or being rear facing. If you go somewhere and they want you to just take your child, your answer is always going to be no. No one can transport a child below 18 without a guardian present. This includes no babysitting or tutoring a child without a guardian present. So that's to protect you, to protect them. Staff can't do it either. So it's just one of the rules that we have in our organization to keep everybody safe. So if you are, maybe you're taking them to an appointment, and this has happened 1 or 2 times, and the parent just goes, oh, well, my other kid's sick, so I'm just going to stay with home. You just take the kid. That's when you call the case manager and tell them to cancel the appointment, because you're not going to take the kid alone, right? That's not going to work here. So, and I do have, those are the little videos. And so when we send this to you, you'll be able to look at the little videos where it says infant rear facing, forward facing booster seat.
No.
Okay, okay, okay.
It was about the front seat
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
but are those North Carolina laws or your rules?
They're North Carolina laws that we've been told.
And
I mean, if you know something different, let me know, but that's the information I have.
well, my recollection is that not only can you be stopped, but there's also like a fine.
I'm sure there
I
is a
think when I
fine.
was, when I was taking care of kids, it was almost $200. And when I was working with you guys, a lot of people couldn't, you know, the new people coming in were, they didn't want to believe it, you know?
Right. But yeah, so that's a good reminder. All right, next slide.
If you
Yep.
do have a question, please take the mic and speak into it, because there are people at home that need to hear.
Yeah,
they
and
can't
I'm
hear
trying to
without the mic.
repeat them, but yeah. All right, mandatory reporter. The biggest thing you need to know about this is just if you suspect any abuse, tell the caseworker immediately, and just tell the caseworker. Try not to tell everybody in your group about it, just because it is really sensitive and we don't want people influenced. The one thing you shouldn't do is try to investigate yourself. So, you know, if you think it, then say something to somebody. And the case manager is the one that will do the reporting. They may ask you to fill out what you saw or what you witnessed. This doesn't happen a whole lot, but it does happen. And it probably happens more with a husband being abusive to a wife, typically. In a lot of cultures, women think that it's perfectly fine that if they burn food or they go out without telling their husband, that their husband has every right to hit them. That is not true in the United States, right? So that's one thing, but we don't want you to get involved, but what we want you to do is just notice it, because you will see them probably more than the case manager will on a regular basis. So you might see some of that. The other thing that happens is people from other cultures don't understand you cannot leave your children alone. I don't know if it's 10, 11, something like that, but I mean, we've had staff members go to a home and there's kids like 7 and under home alone, right? And then even though we tell them, explain to them, you can't do this, sometimes we have to really reinforce that. You cannot leave your children home alone, right? That's not safe. You can't do that. And, you know, there's times when we have had to call social services because we've told them several times and they continue to do it. So, so those are probably the biggest things that you see if you see it, right? Not everybody does, for sure. Anybody have any questions about that? There is a policy and guidelines that you're going to sign and read, and it goes into much more detail that you can read if you are having trouble sleeping or something like that, right? So, all right, next slide. Okay, tips for working with client. These are really important. Learn about the needs of the refugee family members. So I think one of the important things to do is to find out what their hopes are, what their dreams, aspirations are, what they want to do now that they're here, what do they need, right? And there's a difference, right, between want and need, and you really have to help decipher that. We do that all the time with our clients. Sometimes they feel like, so like one of the things that we're to provide for their housing, one of those things is not a TV, but a lot of clients even think, well, we need a TV, and it's like, you don't need a TV, right? That's not something that's required by us. But we are giving them phones, we are giving them laptops, at least one laptop, just because that's how everything's done, right? Even to report something in your apartment that's wrong, you have to go through a portal to do that, right? You can't just call up your landlord and say, hey, you know, this isn't working. So you need to have access to the internet and things. And then I want to bring this up now too, is some of our folks speak English, some of them don't. There are apps that you can use. We have access to interpreters. So like when you go to the airport, well, for sure, we are legally required to have an interpreter present, either by the phone or with you physically, to talk to them and make sure we get all the documents and things like that from them. But when you're going to visit, you may not have that, but Google Translate works really good for some languages, and that's something the case manager can share with you. It doesn't work so great for other languages, right? So like Spanish, as you can imagine, it works really good with, although you can run into weird things sometimes. But so try to learn what you can about the family and what they need as opposed to what they want. Support refugees in navigating the complexities of our education and health system. I think those are two of the main ones. Like they don't understand that the kids have to go to school, they have to do their homework, and this is the reason why, you know, and how our schools is set up. There are kids that live at this Peach Road complex, which is just south of Saunders Street, just south of 440. You know where that Sam's is? It's kind of like Saunders and 440, and it's kind of right here. Well, their little apartment complex is close to there, and we have quite a few refugees there. Those kids go to school in Apex, and they do that, and that's leftover busing laws from a long time ago. Apex is a really good school district, so no one's complaining, but these poor kids have to get up fairly early, and they come home fairly late, right, because of that. So trying to help the parents understand that we know that they have this really long bus ride, but they're also getting a really good education there, right? So some of those things, and then of course the health systems, you all have your own stories, right, about the health system and how it is and why. And you know, with Medicaid, we're finding out they'll pay for some things, but not other things, and it really doesn't make sense. There was a client who came from Afghanistan, and she really had really poor, you know, teeth, that kind of thing. So they all had to be extracted. That's what the dentist said. But we also found out Medicaid wouldn't pay for dentures. So we had to pull our resources and see if we could get some dentures for her, or if a dentist would do that pro bono or something like that, right? So it is kind of weird even for us. So just like sometimes your answer might just be like, I don't know, that's just the way it is here, right? So so kind of just, those are two of the biggest ones that I think that are hard for families. Help the refugees become familiar with their new community. So like I was saying, make sure if the school's within a walkable distance, or where the bus stop is, or where the closest, you know, police station is, or a park that's nearby, you know, maybe even take them on a little walk around their neighborhood so they can kind of see. Now, if they're at Cedar Points, which I talked to you about, or at Peach Road, there's a whole bunch of other refugees that live in those communities. So that's super nice, but we do have a few folks that live downtown in some individual houses that we've gotten from some individual property management teams. And so they're kind of isolated. We try really hard not to do that. But just, you know, making sure people know what's around them, right? And where the closest grocery store is, that kind of thing. So those are some of the big tips. Go ahead in the next slide. All right, and this is tips more working with us, is just keep in touch with that refugee family's caseworker, and that WhatsApp is really a great way. We found that that's just working really well. But seek guidance from our resettlement agency about any programs, terminology, or any other process. If you see something and you're not sure about, find out if we have a resource, because more than likely we do. Like St. Saviour's, downtown Raleigh does a diaper train. So we do get diapers once a month. But if you're seeing that the family's like having to pay this huge amount for diapers, they won't give them all the diapers they need for a month, but they'll give them some. And so like, just let us know if you see something that, you know, or if the child seems like they really need help tutoring, we're going to help connect them to the school better so that they can get some of the tutoring, that kind of thing. Or maybe some of you want to help tutor them, but just don't be afraid to reach out to the case manager and to say, hey, I'm seeing this. I think the family's doing really well here, but here they seem like they're really struggling. So let them know. And don't hesitate to share wins. That's the biggest thing. We deal, gosh, with so many issues every day that it's always nice to hear the good stories. So when they are going, hey, they really got this down pat, please share that with us, because that's always a good thing to hear, the good news too, right? Be conscious of client consent and confidentiality policies. Refugees should always be involved in the decision-making process. And I think this is really hard, and it's hard for us too, right? It's like, we're going to give you these options and you choose one of them, right? And most of the time they do, but every once in a while they'll choose some option that shouldn't even be on the table. And you're like, we try to talk them out of it, but they are adults, and we try to say, fine, if that's how you want to go and you believe that's your best path, then you can go ahead and do that. And that's a hard part of it, but just making sure they know the resources and the options that are available to them, right? But sometimes our hands are tied, like, well, you can't just keep your kid home from school, right? Unless you're going to homeschool, and they're probably not. And so that, like we tell them, they'll learn English faster. The school district is set up to help them, that kind of thing, right? Look to the resettlement agencies for guidance on those resources. And then also, if you find information out there that maybe we don't know about, let us know. We're always trying to look for ways to help share that with the outside community. I think Raleigh, I've been very impressed. We've lived here this summer, it'll be 6 years. But I feel like the nonprofits in Raleigh are excellent. They're really filling in the gaps that are there, right? That people don't have. And so please share any that you have with us, and just know that we're always on the out, looking for that, but raising that awareness in our community about refugees and what's going on with them. Remember, the case manager is working in the best interest of the client, but our hands are also tied, with the State Department requirements. So if you feel like, you don't think we're doing enough, go ahead and share with us, and then let's talk about it. And because our case managers do have like up to, and sometimes more, some of them have more than 100 clients, right? So that's a lot, and we're dealing with a lot of things, and we're dealing with lots of emergencies. It's one of those jobs where we go in and we have these things planned, and that usually never happens, right? Because something else comes up. But please be honest and speak with us and tell us, that whatever it is you think, and we want to sit down and we want to talk to you about it. So please feel free to give us that feedback too. All right, next slide. All right, do's and don'ts for sponsors, and that's you guys. And we've kind of covered some of this, but respect and encourage autonomy, right? Educate and empower. It always feels like it's more helpful and faster just to do things for them, but they really need to learn to do these things so they're ahead of the game down the road. So try to help educate them and empower them to do those things that they can do on their own. You might have to show them, and you might have to teach them a couple times, and yes, that would be faster to do on your own, but please try to do that when you can. Do understand and tap into their strengths. So be careful not to interpret a lack of English as a lack of experience or capability. And that's easy to do. It's easy for me to do, because the only experience I've had with somebody not speaking English would be like when my kids are little and they're not talking right? And so it's really hard, it's really easy for me to slide back into that role. But these are, adults, and they've lived a whole life. They've had a lot of experiences, so just try to help connect them to the resources that are here and the culture things that are going on here. Ensure comprehension. That's really hard, because I have done this too. You talk to clients, and even with an interpreter, you're looking at them and they're just shaking their head yes, and you're like, I don't really think you understand, right? So that's where you have to start asking questions, or ask them in different ways. I had to do that when I was here, because I didn't understand your question, right? So you have to keep, sometimes asking it and figuring out a way to ask it in different ways to make sure they do understand. And you guys will kind of get used to that. And if you've worked with any refugees, you kind of know that too. Try to ask follow-up questions, things like that. And do use a trauma-informed framework. And what we mean by that is just realizing, acknowledging they've had some sort of trauma. If they've been forced to leave their country, they've probably left people behind. They might even have had folks pass away in a war or some kind of conflict that's happened, and they've lost a lot, and they're coming here with and really starting over again. So just be aware of that and know that they're going to kind of go in waves. There might be times when they seem really up and times when they seem a little down and frustrated. So just, be aware of that and keep that in the back of your mind. Next slide. All right, and don't ignore the imbalanced power system. So this is one that I think is really hard for all of us, that we've already got an imbalance and a power because we're here, we know the culture, we've lived here all our life, or maybe some of us have. I mean, you understand that too, right? Because you came here. So make sure you're just aware of that, because they're gonna look to you for guidance, and just remember to be careful about what you're saying and how you're saying it, and try not to make decisions for them, right? So you want to make sure you don't ask them to do things they don't want to do. So like if you wanted them to come here and speak at your church, just remember that, make sure they understand that they get a choice. They can say yes or no, because some of our folks don't like to kind of share their past experience. They want to share forward, and maybe you can offer that to them, that kind of thing. Don't be a bystander. If you witness discrimination or racial slurs, say something, report it, but also be supportive and follow their lead. So maybe you're on a bus, and if somebody were to start saying something, then help move them to a different part of the bus, right? Something like that. Do not attempt to erase their culture belief system. And I'm pretty sure you guys are very open, but I do have to say this to groups, because there's some groups that are more conservative, right? And so we need to make sure we have this line between what is a U.S. law, like leases I was talking about, or letting your children stay at home alone, right? Versus like proselytizing, or, telling them you have to like start dressing like an American or something like that. And I know you guys wouldn't do that. Do not forget to revisit expectations. So our clients have a very interesting concept of America, some of them, right? And they've seen stuff in movies, or they've heard things from their friends. And so they think that, our streets are paved with gold, or, things like that. And so keep reminding them, well, that's like, especially like for some of them, for the jobs, they do have to start at a much maybe lower place than where they were, either because the degree doesn't transfer, or just, you've got to start somewhere, and reminding them, well, I had to start at the bottom too at one time, right? And when you prove yourself, you can work your way up. But just reminding them of those kind of things, reminding them that, if they're asking you for stuff that's outrageous, that has happened to one group. This gentleman gave the group like a list of really high-end cosmetics, and they called me, and I'm like, you don't have to purchase those for them, right? Just because they give it to you. No is no, right? And you guys get to decide where those limits are too. They had soap, they had shampoo, and they had money that they could go get that, but they had a nice stock of it already, so they don't need high-end cosmetics. So that's only happened to one group that I know. But just remind them, you guys are going to have to look at expectations, and so will they. Next slide, please. All right, allyship. And this really kind of goes with, what John's talking about today, right? Allyship is when a person of privilege works in solidarity and partnership with a marginalized group of people to help dismantle the systems and challenge a group's basic rights, equal access, and ability to thrive in our society. That's a whole big packed sentence just to say that that what we're trying to do is stand in solidarity with them, trying to make sure they understand that we're working with them and for them, but that we are, this acknowledgement, we live in this system. So our society is set up for people to have cars and drive. That already puts them outside of where they would be, right? And so it's just acknowledging there's going to be some systems that you'll see that are unfair and not balanced, and trying to help them navigate through those. It's like, yep, it's going to take you a while to get a car, and yes, our society is set up for a car, but there is this bus, and yes, it takes longer, but you can save up your money, you can do this to get a car, right? That kind of thing. Because there is, and then also sharing that with elected officials, making sure they understand. It would be nice if we had a better transit system, not just for refugees, but there's a whole bunch of people in the Raleigh community that have to use the bus. They don't have a car either, and they struggle with some of these same issues. So our sponsorship goal is to provide sustainable support for the refugee families as they transition to a new chapter in life. So one of the things we do is make sure they're in affordable housing, right? So that they can keep continuing to pay and sustain that. We put them by a bus stop, right? So we do things like that to make sure that what we start can be continued. We make sure that they get jobs that pay more than minimum wage. I think the last quarter, the average job that people got was $16 an hour. So we try really hard to make sure that they get something that's reasonable and that they can sustain then where they're living, that kind of thing. Beware of the power imbalance that does exist there. There's a difference between helping and serving. There's a great book called When Helping Hurts, and it gives all sorts of examples of like, you mean well and you mean to do this, but then it ends up being something that's not so helpful. And then, so just allyship invites you to listen and hold yourself accountable, right, to your actions. Make sure you're watching your biases and where, you need to learn things too, that kind of thing. All right, next slide. Boundaries. So we have to set good boundaries because that creates a nice basis, right, for a relationship. And that's true in any relationship you have, whether it's with refugees or people in your own family, right? We've all got to have boundaries. And the boundaries restore dignity, restore trust, and restore choice. These are three things that we found that refugees lose when they come here. They have a hard time because they've been treated like second-class citizens where they've come from. They've lived in poverty if they've had to spend years in refugee camps, that kind of thing. They don't want to trust people. I think one of the hardest things for them to believe is that our police department is really there to help them, right? That's one of the things you can do to reinforce, and maybe even if you have someone that you know that's a police officer, maybe even inviting them to meet that police officer in uniform so they understand that they're here for the most part to protect us. I mean, there are bad policemen out there, but helping them understand that if you call 911, they're here to help you, right? Not to hurt you. And then choice. A lot of them have lost choice, right? They just don't have the ability. And sometimes that gets overwhelming for them too. You take them to the grocery store and you go down the cereal aisle and there's just 1,000 different cereals. I mean, sometimes those things are overwhelming to them, right? So just kind of helping them through those kind of things and letting them know, well, you probably don't want all this sugary stuff, right? You probably want this, right? Plus, even if they know English, if you saw Captain Crunch, what kind of cereal would you think that would be? I don't know, like Captain Crunch, I don't know, what does that even mean? So just helping them navigate some of those choices too, right? So taking on client problems as your own can feel like compassion, but it ultimately removes that power and agency from them, right? So try not to get overwhelmed, try not to get too involved, let them make the decisions instead of you feeling like you have to do that. Rely on us, our organization. We've been doing this for a long time. And so please come to us too when you run into those kind of walls. Don't be afraid to say no. Enforcing a boundary may feel uncomfortable in the short term, but we're really looking for this long-term success, right? All right, next slide. Okay, notes on gifts. Giving gifts, so avoid investing in expensive and/or large items such as vehicles, plane tickets, unnecessary appliances, right? So we're asking you not to do those things, even if they ask not to do that. Accepting gifts, a client should never be made to feel that they owe the group anything. If they want to invite you in for tea and cookies, do it. That's great, right? But if they were to have something really valuable or something and they want to give it to you, tell them no, right? Most of them don't, but if they had something that said, this is really meaningful to my family, we want to give it to you, that's when you would, ask your case manager. But coming in, one of the biggest things they want to do is hospitality. So feeding you, having tea, having coffee, that kind of thing is a great thing to do. And that's something they can do for you, right? Because they want to give back. They want to have a relationship too. A client's right to privacy is always respected. So while it's a privilege to learn about their past, please don't ask them to share how they got here. Because sometimes, like there's one person in our agency who's a former refugee. She's been here 12 years. I don't know her story. She won't share it with people. So whatever it was traumatic, and I never asked her, and I'm not going to ask her, right? So kind of ask about, once again, well, what do you want to do now that you're here? And if they want to tell you the story after they build some trust, then sit and listen, and that's great, but just don't ask them about it. When asking for any information, consider how much information do I need to do my job. You know, so if you're filling out paperwork and stuff, actually you'll probably get most of that from the case manager, not the client. But just, you know, pay attention to that, like, what do I need to know to do this? So, all right, next slide, please. All right, boundaries. So this is something you guys have to decide before you work with a family. What contact information are you going to give to the clients, right? Are you going to give them one person's number or several of your numbers? What are you going to do? And then which planned times will we visit the client? If we're flexible with times when we visit, how are you going to set up boundaries? So what if they call you, you know, and say, and it's 2:00 on a Friday afternoon, and they're like, well, I have a doctor's appointment at 3. Are you going to take me? And you didn't know anything about it, you can go, no, we're not taking you, right? I mean, we have to do that in our own organization, right? They'll call case managers last minute, and they're like, you know, if you would have told me, we could have done a whole bunch of other things, but you didn't tell me, right? So, or if they call you or they text you 11:00 at night, most of them will text you because they can do that with Google Translate, right? But put boundaries on them. Tell them, if you send me a text 11:00 at night, I'm not going to look at it, right? That's what our case managers have to do. If it's really an emergency, you need to call 911, don't call me, right? So you guys just have to decide how you're going to put those boundaries up, what information you're going to give them and what you're going to take, that kind of thing. And they will sometimes with Google Translate, like one of the case managers was telling me the other day, they're like, I'm in bad need of help, oven. And he's like, okay, now I need to figure out, are they really in bad health? Or is he trying to say his oven's not working? And it was that his oven wasn't working, right? So, you know, you're just like, I don't know what all this means. So you might have to clarify some of that. But where will we take the clients that might require money? So like, you know, if you want to take them out to eat, they don't have a lot of money. So maybe you want to consider getting a meal for them. If you decide to do that, maybe they want to go somewhere like the state fair. You know, just kind of think about those things because they do have a limited income. How will we ask the client to provide for their own money for a trip? Like if they say, well, I really want to go to the beach, and you're like, well, okay, we can do that, but you're going to have to spend some money. Like, just, you know, you guys decide what your boundaries are and how you're going to do that. What spaces will we invite the clients to? Are they going to be invited to our homes, which I think is a really nice thing, but they also said sometimes clients feel a little inadequate if they're going, you know, to some fancy home and they don't, and their home's not as nice. I've never run into that with clients. That's just something in the training they've told us to bring up, but I've not seen that. Most refugees, like I think 80% of them have never been asked to be in an American person's home. So if you want to do that, do that. Or maybe you want to have a barbecue or something, you know, whatever. How will we as a team make sure the client knows they have the power to consent to activities or services? So you guys also decide that, like, how are we going to ensure that this is something they really want to do? What is our role as co-sponsor, and how does that differ from the role of the agency? So that's one thing that's very confusing to our clients. They think we're all just the same, right? Because you guys are working with them, we're working with them. So a lot of times if they're asking you about specific things, like where's my check? Or, you know, I need this, constantly refer them back to their case manager. That's just one of those things that's the easiest to do, so that their case manager is aware. And so that you guys aren't being burdened with stuff that you don't know about, especially if they're, because we give them checks from the State Department, things like that. So just make sure that you're constantly referring them back to the case manager. It's kind of like a mom-dad thing, right? When the kids were little, they figured out really fast that they could ask me and I'd say no, and they'd ask their dad and he'd be like, okay. And so then we had to learn, just ask your mom everything, right? And that's paid off well for me because now I'm the one they call all the time, right? So when they need something, but just keep referring them back to their case manager. And then how can we empower clients to communicate with agency staff? So like if they feel like their case manager isn't doing anything for them, just empower them, go, really, you need to talk to your case manager about this. And even if you wanted to come in and bring them in and say, let's have a conversation because they're feeling like, you know, their needs aren't being met, feel like you can do that too. All right, next slide, please. All right, once again, I have the slide up. This is a partnership, and that's what we want to do, and that's what the State Department wants us to do, is to partner all of us together to make sure that this family that you're sponsoring can come in and has a way to integrate and connect with our community. All right, next slide, please. All right, so this is at the end, and so when we send you these slides, you can go on and hit they're all links, right? So that's just some stuff that you can read if you want before you get assigned to a family, and learn more about what is allyship or welcoming people to America, or what is trauma-informed care. What does that mean exactly? That kind of thing. All right, next slide. All right, so that's the end. So now what's going to happen is you guys have all written down your emails, right, for me?
No,
or is it?
it's here.
It's here. Did anybody not get their email on here? Okay. So what I'm going to do is write you all and make sure that this works. And then, so there's a couple things we need from you. All of our volunteers have to be vetted per our headquarters, so it's consistent in all of our offices. But you'll have to send me a copy of your latest COVID card. You don't need to send me all of them, just that you've been vaccinated for COVID. You'll have to send me a picture of your driver's license and then proof of your insurance. And you can just take these pictures with your cell phone if you want, and then just email it to me, and I can use it that way. Yeah.
Is that auto insurance?
Yes, auto. Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I forget to say that. Yeah, I don't need your health insurance. I just need your vehicle auto insurance, right? Then, in the same time, and so sometime next week, I'm going to send you a DocuSign, and it has that long policies and procedures that you need to read through and sign. You know, it just kind of talks about, you know, there's some mandatory reporting things in there, but there's also about how to interact with clients. There's just all sorts of things in there. You have to read that, and then you can just sign it with a DocuSign. There's also an insurance verification form, which has a lot. It just, you're putting down your license plate, your vehicle, that kind of thing. And then I think those are the two things on the DocuSign. Yes.
Use the microphone.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a minimum age, like 18?
Yes.
18?
So you have to be 18.
Okay.
Because we do a background check. So after I get the DocuSign and the other information from you, I will send you an email and letting you know that I've put your name into the Sterling, is the name of the company that does the background check system. And then they're going to send you an email. You'll put all your information. It's from the last 7 years where you've lived, your driver's license number, that kind of thing. And then they'll do a background check, and those usually come back within 24 hours. Sometimes if it's a state that they've got some kind of weird coordination with, it might take like 3 or 4 days, but.
Well, just real briefly, I know we all want to get going. Can you tell us some of the groups you're working with now? Is it Afghanistan or Cuba?
Yeah, so we do have folks we still have got a few coming in from Afghanistan, from other countries that can't take the load that they have. But right now it's predominantly Latin America, like Guatemala and El Salvador. We've got people from the Republic of Congo, I don't know if we've had any from Syria recently, but we're thinking that's coming down the pipeline, and then Burmese, Burmese people. So that's kind of the group, and it does go in waves, but that's kind of what we're getting right now. So anybody that speaks Spanish or French, that's helpful for some of these folks. And you, like I said, you don't have to have anybody. After
We've
we,
got 2 wonderful Spanish speakers.
oh, okay, well, great. Well, that'll help. I guess what you need to do, we'll start getting all this document stuff done, and it can all be done pretty quickly. It's kind of dependent on you guys filling it out and giving it back to me. But then you guys just tell me when you're ready. So when you're ready to take on a family, you know, is it as soon as we get done, or you're like, we'll be ready in August, you know, kind of thing, or whenever you want to do it. And then we'll pair you with a family, and maybe what size family, you know, you want. Like, we try not to take any families over 6 or 7 at this point, just because most rental places won't let us have more than 6 or 7, even if they're all related. They won't let them all stay in like a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment, right? So that's kind of hard. So anyway, just kind of maybe what size of family you want to work with, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, just one of the things that occurred to me is that if you're talking about, you know, families, you know, with more than just a few people, it might be difficult for one person in one car to go to the airport and pick them all up. You might have to have
A couple.
more
Yeah.
than one go together or something. How
Right.
does that work?
Right, and yeah, and you will. So there'll probably be a group with you. I mean, even now with our case managers are predominantly picking them up from the airport, they're getting other people to help them anyway. And sometimes they do come with luggage. It kind of depends on where they're coming from. Most of the time they don't have luggage, but sometimes they do. And then sometimes that's like even another car to carry the luggage, especially if you put car seats in cars and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
So, as far as the coordination, it comes mostly through the case manager, and then eventually they would start talking to us directly?
Yes, they will. So the way that we have it set up is I'm doing the training and I'm getting all the background checks, because that's what I do. And so then I'll give them all the information and then say, these guys are ready. And then they'll, if you've got your WhatsApp ready to go, then they'll give you their numbers and you can put them on the WhatsApp, that kind of thing, and then we'll start rolling.
Okay.
And they'll give you the information about, like, I won't have that information about the airport pickup and stuff like that. They'll have that information and tell you what time they're coming in, that kind of thing.
And where they go. And then as far as something like health insurance, is that this with your Medicaid or?
Yeah, they do. They all qualify for Medicaid.
Okay.
So.
And as far as further services, if they're coming from, you know, a place that caused trauma, are there also counseling and psychological services available?
You know, that is something that we're working on more and more to help them. We've got some, but we need more. I mean, we're really realizing we need more than what we've been given. So we're in the process. So if you all have connections like that, let us know too. But we do have a couple of folks on staff that are doing some of that as well.
Are the families receptive to that? I know sometimes there's a stigma.
Yeah, I think that, you know, if they're reaching out to, I mean, we usually let them reach out to us and tell us. We haven't found one where somebody's refused, you know what I mean? Like, if we're seeing an issue, then we're trying to get them the help, and they seem pretty appreciative of it. But they will come in waves, and that's the thing that's hard, right? And I would think I would be that way too. If I moved somewhere where I didn't understand things, I'm probably going to be up sometimes, especially when I like, oh, I get this finally, right? And then other times when I'm really frustrated, right? So it's hard to tell. So, but we are trying to, yeah, work on that.
I'm a little confused
Okay.
because we've got about 20 people here, okay? So 2 or 3 go to the airport and meet a person, get them settled, and then 2 days later, somebody has to take them to the doctor, and another different person shows up at their door. And then 3 days later, somebody has to take them to school. How do they accept or understand that you've got 20 different people
Right.
involved in their case?
And usually the case manager will tell them, hey, someone's gonna come and get you and do this, right? And I've never had, and so that's why they get kind of confused about who is staff and who is volunteers. They really don't know the difference between it. They just think they have this group of people that are helping and supporting them. And they're usually, fine with that. We haven't run into too many problems, but usually it's the case manager saying, someone's going to come and get you and take you to go do this specific thing. Because even within our staff, we have these different programs, and it's different staff showing up too at times, right? So we just kind of, and they seem pretty willing, which is also kind of an issue, right? We don't want them opening the door for just anyone, that kind of thing, right? You know what I mean? So we do try to explain to them that someone is coming at this time to get you, so.
So would the case manager determine, the name of the person who's going to come to let them know who to,
Sometimes they
expect, or-
do, and some
Okay.
case managers are better about that than others, right? So some of them are like telling them like, hey, yeah, a kid's gonna come and get you. But a lot of times they'll just say, hey, somebody's gonna come.
I've got
It's
an
kind of
online
weird.
question.
Huh?
I've got someone online.
Oh, okay, great.
Go ahead, Melinda. Just unmute yourself.
I was just wondering that, I don't know how many people are online, but how do we get the information, to the paperwork we have to give you an email or?
Yeah, and I don't know if Elizabeth or Ken would be willing to send me their email.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so someone here is gonna send me your email,
Okay,
okay? Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anybody else that's online that
It looks
needs
like
to
there's one
also
more
be added
person.
to the list?
That's Joe.
Oh, okay. I
Is there
can't see from
3%?
here.
So it's Melinda and,
Yeah, there's 3
Joe and
participants.
us.
Or is there-
Yeah,
We're good.
yeah.
We're 2 people. Hey, Ken.
One more question.
So just to make sure I understand, is the idea that our group would support one family or multiple families? Or?
Yeah, one family, and so because this is all new, and like I said, I've got several groups trained, but 2 are active right now. So what we're hoping is that you will do a family for 3 months, and then you guys will take a little rest. I mean, you could still be friends with the family, right? But you'll take a rest from giving them services, that kind of thing. Give us some feedback about like what worked, what didn't work, that kind of thing, so we can constantly be improving it. And then you guys could take another family, right? So, but we want you guys, especially since this is all new, is the group to just work with one family to begin with, and then we can give you guys another family if you want. Yeah,
So like, after we've gone through sort of one cycle,
right.
maybe we'll find that, enough of us are involved that we could break into 2 groups and have, 2
And
different.
you might, and some groups are doing that. They are breaking into 2 groups like right from the beginning. But here's what I'm finding that's kind of interesting is that it's not a ton of paperwork, but it is some paperwork. And then sometimes people go down the line and then they just decide, you know what, I don't want to do this after all. And the groups have gotten a little smaller, right? So I'd be happy if everybody's still here, but there might be some people, or people have, like somebody was going through the process, but they had a huge life-changing event. And so they're like, I've got to back out, right? So that happens too, right? So you guys can kind of decide that too, if you wanted to split or you just want to all do it together or however you want.